Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our panel titled Reclaiming Europe, Navigating the Political Compass. We could also have used a more provoking formulation. Has Europe lost orientation? Our European Union, and I'm using our not only as a representative of Konrad Adenauer Foundation's Department for European and International Cooperation, but as a convinced European myself. Our European Union is based on important common principles, ethics, and values, which have increasingly suffered setback in recent times. Whether we look at Hungary or Poland, in the light of such common values that tie our European states together, the evolution seems to be detrimental. However, I urge everyone, ladies and gentlemen, to not be hoodwinked by these recent unfolding events, as the European Union was, remains, and will be our most successful achievement in promoting peace and prosperity in all our nations. European integration always moves forward through crises. This is an expression you very often hear by politicians or European officials. In this regard, the COVID-19 crisis has often put us to the test, and many of us, unfortunately, have fallen back into old habits of merely thinking about their own nation. However, this way of thinking will not get us anywhere in the long run, as the economic but also the social well-being of our small nations depends on us standing as a strong unit, as well as being recognized as such by the rest of the world. This does by no ways mean we should neglect the duty of the state to primarily look after our citizens. In this regard, we have to see how the EU is navigating its compass towards the US and China. In India, there was much criticism about the CAI, that's the Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, end of 2020, between the EU and China. Basically, it was argued that in favor of short-term economic gains, the EU betrays its own principles. Well, the agreement is not yet ratified. Some EU politicians already speak of the deal being killed. I'm sure our panelists can shed some light on that. Early May, Portugal will host the next India-European Union summit. We hope that the summit will not only show a beautiful harbor, the Porto Scale, that is how Portugal got its name, but we also hope that the participants will recognize the beauty of further and stronger cooperation between India and Europe. It's now my pleasure to be introducing this exciting panel discussion, which is filled to the brim by knowledgeable and insightful panelists. With Dr. Augusto Santos Silva, I have the privilege to present the Portuguese Minister of Foreign Affairs, and who, like few others, is committed to our shared core European values of multilateralism, cooperation, and joint decision-making, and who thus champions a strong and united Europe, in which each and every European enjoys an opportunity to prosper. In Dr. Ance Logar, we have with us the Slovenian Foreign Minister, whose country will take over the presidency of the Council of the European Union in a few months' time, and who has constantly voiced his particular commitment towards defending the upholding of the rule of law within the EU. Moreover, his government, with its close cooperation with the current Council President Portugal, his immediate predecessor Germany, as well as France, serves as a shining example of efficient, beneficial and fruitful cooperation between EU nations. By the presence of Dr. Bogdan Aurescu, the panel is further enriched by yet another staunch advocate of solidarity and unity among European member countries. In his role as Romanian Foreign Minister, he stands firmly for our shared vision of a strong union and collective governance among all EU member states. We are also joined by the presence of Mrs. Milena Lacharevic, who is one of the founders and program director at the European Policy Center. She is a proven and outspoken expert in the field of public administration reform. And last, but certainly not least, I'm delighted to introduce you to Dr. Garima Mohan, a renowned scholar who has done extensive and impactful research inter alia on European-Indian relations, currently active in the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Her expertise clearly makes her a perfect fit as moderator for this event. Garima, over to you.
Welcome to the Raisina Dialogue 2021. In this panel, titled Reclaiming Europe, Navigating the Political Compass, we'll be talking about the challenges and crises facing the European Union today, particularly as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll discuss how the EU positions itself in the world, especially as it navigates US-China competition. And finally, we'll talk about the changing perceptions of India as a partner in the European Union and its member states. To discuss these themes today, we have a fantastic panel with us representing countries that are at the forefront of figuring out some of these questions. We're very happy to welcome Minister Augusto Santos Silva, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Portugal, Minister Bogdan Orescu, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Romania, Ante Loga, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Slovenia, and Milena Lacharevic, Director and Co-founder, European Policy Center in Serbia. I'm Garima Mohan from the German Marshall Fund, and I'll be your moderator for this discussion. Minister Silva, let's start this conversation with you, since Portugal currently holds the EU presidency. Now, the COVID-19 crisis has brought challenges of governance across the world, and the EU has been no stranger to them, first with the response to the pandemic and now with vaccine production and distribution. The EU-China relationship has been somewhat of a roller coaster, hitting a bit of a low at the beginning of the pandemic, to signing the CAI agreement, to now with China imposing sanctions on European members of parliament, think tanks, and researchers. At the same time, you have a good sort of offer for partnership from the Biden administration as it seeks to strengthen its alliances and partnerships. I would want to know from you what you think are the top 3 challenges the EU faces today that it will have to navigate in 2021, particularly also under Portugal's presidency. What would be your priorities? Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much. For me, the 3 top priorities are the following ones. First of all, to roll out the vaccination process in order to guarantee that at least 2/3 of our adults can be vaccinated until the end of summer. For us, it is very important to guarantee the so-called herd immunity. The second priority is to launch our recovery plans. We decided last year to fund this these national recovery plans with a new financial instrument of the European Union as such, the Recovery Fund. And now we are about to conclude the drafts, the national plans that have to be reviewed by the Commission and approved by the Council of Ministers of the European Union. And I think until the end of this summer, we need to have these national plans of recovery approved, and in order that the appropriate funding can help the national governments to relaunch to help the recovery of our economies. Our third priority in terms of external relations is to seize this momentum. We are living a new momentum with the Biden administration and its first decisions, and this momentum is the momentum of re-encounter between the closest allies in the world, Europeans and the Americans. So, and this is very interesting because from a political point of view, it's a kind of triangle, because since the United Kingdom exits the European Union this last year, we have now to think of this relation as a relation between three main actors: European Union, United Kingdom, and United States.
Thank you very much. When you're talking about foreign policy priorities, may I ask you about India as well? Because under the Portuguese presidency, Prime Minister Modi will be meeting all EU 27 heads of state on May 8th in Porto. Now, as far as I understand, this is a very rare format used for meetings with countries, and India is in a privileged position. How did you decide to focus on India, both at the EU level as well as Portugal? Can you tell us about the changing European perceptions of India today?
Yes, of course, I would be delighted to do so. Our aims are two. We have two aims in mind. The first aim is to get as comprehensive as we can envisage a relationship of Europe with all the relevant parties, all the relevant actors in the world. Traditionally, we have a strong relationship with Latin America. We have to improve it. Traditionally, we have a close relationship with our neighborhood, both in North Africa and in the Eastern Europe. Traditionally, we have a good relationship with Sub-Saharan Africa, but we have to pay more attention to Asia and to the vital Indo-Pacific region. But in order to have this comprehensive approach, we have also to be well balanced in this approach. And in order to have a balanced approach to the Indo-Pacific or to the Asia-Pacific region, we have, of course, to pay attention to our traditional allies in that area: Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea. We have to pay attention to the rising influence of China, of course. We have to pay attention to the Asian countries, but we have to pay more attention to India. India is 1.3 billion people. India is one of the most important economies in the world. India is the largest democracy in the world, and European Union and India have to have regular political dialogue and have to improve their cooperation in climate action, in connectivity, in digital, and India and the European Union, have to relaunch the negotiations on economic agreements, because agreements on trade and investment are very important pathways to develop this friendship and this proximity between these two largest democracies in the world.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let's move to Minister Rescue. I would start with the same question about challenges and priorities for the EU. How does it look from Eastern Europe, from Romania? Do you agree with what Mr. Silva has outlined?
Well, I cannot but fully agree with what Augusto just said. I think it's extremely important to focus first on combating the pandemic, and the efforts which are undertaken at EU level show how difficult it is, but at the same time also show how difficult it would have been without an EU collective effort to combat the pandemic, to put together the mechanism for acquiring and distributing the vaccines, even if we have certain difficulties in that, but we solve them all the time. Second, I couldn't but fully support the effort to recover from the economic point of view. The economic crisis, which is prompted by the pandemic crisis, is extremely difficult, and we need to make use of this huge amount of money that is available now for all the member states. And we are looking forward to use this money as soon as possible. And this is yet another example of how the EU was able to put together a mechanism which is hopefully efficient, but at the same time has enough amplitude to cope with the very difficult consequences of the crisis. And also, I think it is important to take a look at the lessons learned after the pandemic, because the EU and the whole world, as a matter of fact, navigated through uncharted and very troubled waters. And I think out of this crisis, there is a number of important lessons that we have learned. First of all, how important multilateralism is, and an efficient multilateralism is one important goal that we should follow. At the beginning of the crisis, it was this temptation of certain states in the world, including EU member states, to act alone, to act unilaterally, but this showed that it is inefficient and counterproductive, and then we started to work together at the level of the EU, but more importantly also at the level of the international community as a whole. And the COVAX instrument is perhaps one good example of how we can work, but we can improve, of course, the efficiency of this mechanism and of other multilateral mechanisms. Then another important lesson that we learned is the relevance of improving our strategic resilience. Resilience means a lot. Resilience domestically, resilience at international level, including the resilience of our international mechanisms and our international organizations that we are part of. And this is another very important goal. It's resilience from actors which are not like-minded with us in terms of values and in terms of intentions of shaping our decision-making in foreign policy and security issues. And I think strategic resilience means also improving the transatlantic partnership, and I agree with Augusto that the new administration in Washington represents a very good opportunity for, on one hand, redressing what was broken, and at the same time improving and adding more substance, more instruments, more mechanisms to this. But without international law and respect for and promotion of democracy and human rights and the rule of law, both multilateralism and resilience cannot be efficient. And this is yet another avenue that we have to follow. It was this temptation, or perhaps it was the pretext for some states to use the pandemic context in order to diminish the exercise of rights and freedoms. And I think this shouldn't be allowed by the international community, and definitely EU has a word to say about that, and to promote democracy and rule of law and human rights at world level. So these are just some of the lessons that we have learned, and we have to use these lessons learned, including in the context of the Conference for the Future of Europe that will be launched, will be launched soon, hopefully on the 9th of May, which is also another good opportunity, and this is the second part of the answer to your question, to come back to our strategic agenda, because, despite the pandemic and beyond these lessons learned after the pandemic, we need to go back to the fundamentals, because we also have some issues to correct and make better and improve coming from, before this crisis.
Wonderful. I like that you've given an optimistic outlook and lessons learned from the EU's experience of dealing with the pandemic, because it is unprecedented for states across the world. And when you speak of like-minded partners and the values-based foreign policy agenda, let me ask you about China. So our audience in India, of course, and across the world is quite fascinated by the experience of Central and Eastern Europe with Belt and Road Initiative, with the 17+1 format. Now, Romania has recently limited Chinese investments in core sectors like nuclear power and telecom, something that Western European countries are still struggling to do. And the 17+1 summit we saw had less than enthusiastic uptake this year. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with BRI, how your relationship with China has evolved over the last year or so?
Well, Romania has a pragmatic and at the same time a very principled approach as far as the relationship between our country and China. Because our action is based on our current international status. We are a member of the European Union, a NATO ally, and at the same time a strong strategic partner to the United States. And these are the golden triangle of our foreign and security policy. At the same time, our principled approach is about promoting democratic values, multilateralism, and international law. Starting from that, we see our relationship with China, which has a long history. We have more than 70 years of diplomatic relations and ample partnership for friendship and cooperation. This is the exact name, which was concluded in 2004. So we approach our cooperation with China in a realistic manner, given the current status of Romania and the international context. And we also, of course, act in line with the joint communication of 2019 of the High Commissioner, High Representative for Foreign Policy and Security Affairs of the European Union and the European Commission, or the other name is the EU-China Strategic Outlook, where China is seen both as a partner for negotiation, a cooperative partner, and at the same time an economic competitor and a systemic rival. So all these design a comprehensive and at the same time nuanced way the EU as a whole sees China. Now 17+1. 17+1 was designed as an economic cooperation platform, and it should stay like that. It should stay non-political, it should stay non-ideological. It is important to see what benefits we can get from this cooperation framework. Frankly speaking, for the time being, the concrete results for Romania are still to be seen, and we need a comprehensive analysis of what are the perspectives, concrete economic perspectives coming from this format. As far as the Belt and Road Initiative, we are not a party of this format. Interconnectivity projects which are designed within the Belt and Road Initiative do not include Romania. We are at present very much focused on putting to life the interconnectivity projects which are supposed to connect us from the economic and strategic point of view from the north to the south of the Central European and Southeast European region, also called as the Three Seas region. We are focusing, for instance, on two very important projects like rail to sea, connecting the Romanian port of Constanța to the Polish port of Gdansk, or Via Carpathia, which is a road connecting Poland to Romania as well, all through the countries which are in between us. And I think these are the projects which we want to, for instance, to develop together with our like-minded partners.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Minister. Shifting to you, Minister Logar. Now, Slovenia also has a strong economic partnership with China, at the same time, political and security partnership with the United States. I would like to hear your opinion of the Biden administration and its agenda and priorities, which have become clear in the beginning of this year, as well as what the EU has put on the table for strengthening transatlantic ties. How do you assess these?
Well, thank you for the question. We have a quite vibrant bilateral exchange with China, but at the same time it's very unbalanced one. So we hardly export and we are importing vast amount of goods from China. If we compare it with our trade to United States, for example, for our companies, it's more important to have market, United States market, as we export, I think, double more than we export to China. If we consider, let's say, posting European Union towards those two superpowers, so China or United States, I think we all agree around this virtual table that the strongest ally and partner to European Union are United States. So in that sense, I think it's urgent, as Augusto already presented, to enhance cooperation between European Union and United States. And I'm very glad that we recently had a conversation with Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, during Portuguese presidency and the Foreign Affairs Council in Brussels. And I think this is of utmost importance to, let's say, speed up this way of cooperating. For example, last EU-United States summit was in 2014. I mean, being two strongest allies and having discussion on the top level 7 years ago, I think this is a way too long to wait. So I think during Portuguese presidency, or if not during Slovenian presidency, there should be a EU-United States summit where should we, let's say, strive for mutual cooperation on a global scale. I mean, those are the two biggest democratical market that has jointly roughly 1/3 of world GDP. And if in the meantime there was like Indo-Pacific free trade agreement adopted recently, we stopped discussion a few years ago between European Union and United States. So there should be, I think, next step as well, comprehensive free trade agreement between the two entities. And as concerns Slovenia and future, so incoming presidency, we will do our utmost to enhance this cooperation and talks in starting new discussion with Biden administration.
Thank you very much. If I can be a little provocative, do you think the timing of the KAI agreement was a good idea just before the Biden administration came into office, and they had highlighted a little bit their concerns with the agreement? Do you think this was a good idea, the timing of the agreement from the EU side, and going forward, will it be increasingly difficult for the EU to navigate these two strong partnerships?
Well, the European Union is based on democratical values and on a dialogue. So the, let's say, adoption procedure is the lengthy one. It means that from, let's say, a scrap to the blueprint of the legislative proposal or of an agreement, it takes some time, which is bad for, let's say, efficiency, but is very good for fighting and defending this democratical value. And even though there was an agreement on the interinstitutional level at the, let's say, evening of German presidency, there still needs to be a lengthy discussion within member state and as well European Parliament to accommodate all second thoughts or maybe issues that are outstanding. However, I think it was a very, let's say, not very wise decision from the Chinese side to take sanctions against some members of European Parliament or some members of member states that were within the bodies that are deciding on, let's say, EU or a sanction decision within the European Council. So in that sense, I think the mistake was done for the time being from Chinese side, and I'm really, let's say, interesting to see how the discussion within the European Parliament that at the end has to ratify the agreement will take place and what tones we will hear there in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Minister. Moving to Milena. Now, Serbia is in a very interesting position. You are an EU accession country. At the same time, since the beginning of the pandemic, you've benefited a lot from medical assistance from China in the beginning, and now this vaccine rollout program as the rest of Europe is still struggling to come to the same point. How do you think this is changing the conversations in Belgrade and the region?
Thank you, Garima, for that question. Yes, indeed, Serbia is a country that is somehow still trying to sit on all the possible chairs, as was mentioned by some foreign diplomats as well. And I think that during the pandemic, influence of China in particular, Russia not as much, I can say, but to an extent Russia as well, has increased substantially. And the Serbian leadership, the political leadership for the time being, has successfully shown that this friendship with China has benefited Serbia in terms of medical assistance and vaccination. At the same time, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw that the president even himself spoke about, end of European solidarity and made similar statements in some very important addresses, which I think after that was to a certain extent amended, although not fully. And we have seen to an extent that somehow EU has been called out on every single mistake. You know, at that time, at the beginning of the pandemic, to compare, at the beginning of the pandemic in Europe, to compare China, that had already been dealing with the pandemic for a while, with the reactions of the EU, which was at that moment being thrown into the crisis, was truly unfair. But at the same time, this showed that, let's say, the position of Serbia outside of the European Union does create, let's say, significant space for political maneuver. And here I'm echoing something that Minister Aurescu mentioned. He actually said that, you know, Romania as an EU member country, as a NATO member country, does have to have a specific and very, very cautious and very structured relationship with China. This is exactly what Serbia and the Western Balkan region, to a large extent, although some of the countries of the region are already in the NATO, but this is what we are lacking. And I think that this is showing the importance of the European Union's geostrategic role and position in the region. I believe that the EU needs to become much more geostrategic in its relationship with the Western Balkan region, and Serbia as the biggest country of the region in particular. It was a mistake, in my view, of the previous Juncker's Commission to explicitly state that enlargement would not happen during that mandate, although President of the Commission at that time was speaking about the very moment of accession. A lot of people saw that as a denunciation of the enlargement process itself, and we could feel that there was really a lack of attention to the region paid in on the part of the EU. The EU was struggling with its own crises, but at the same time, considering that the region is very much inside of the EU and very much geographically surrounded by the EU, the EU should not forget the strategic importance that it has and that it plays in the region. I think that with the new Commission, this problem has somewhat been fixed, although not fully. Of course, as with every policy and every negotiation within the EU, things do take time, and sometimes, you know, starting from a good idea, you end up with numerous compromises which can tend to water down some good ideas from the very beginning. The EU presented a new enlargement approach to the region some months ago, and the idea was indeed to create, to turn enlargement into a more political process with a greater awareness of this strategic importance of the European Union in the region, and at the same time awareness of the strong influences of the non-democratic, non-European influences in the region. At this moment, we are waiting to see how much this political process will really emanate itself. We saw, for example, that in the joint declaration agreed within among the European Union's institutions on the Conference on the Future of Europe, which Minister Aurescu rightfully mentioned, the Western Balkans are not mentioned, although we are not member states. This region is an accession region, as you said yourself, and I think that it would be very important to include the region in some sort of an observer status. in this discussion and conversation on the future of Europe. Because if the leadership, if the political leadership and the civil society and the citizens of this region do not feel as part of the mainstream discussions and conversations, policy conversations in the European Union, they are likely to feel less European. And you know, we cannot feel Chinese, we cannot feel that we are Asian, we are in the middle of Europe. But this, let's say, false brotherhood with China, especially in Serbia, is being promulgated, and it is being very much emphasized by the political leadership for their own reasons. And you know, at the same time, the relationship with China and all this influence and all the support that we are getting as citizens of Serbia, we don't know at what price this comes. You know, people see and feel the benefits right now, but we don't know how we are paying for these vaccines. Nobody has nobody has provided any sort of a price list. And at the same time, what we know for the time being from anecdotal evidence is that Chinese investors are being promised most of the large-scale investment projects in Serbia in the coming years. Now, I think I can bet, you know, that these kinds of investments will come at a price, and that in the end it will be the Serbian citizens who will be paying the price of these vaccines through those investments, which will probably be higher, more expensive, with the embedded corruption costs than, you know, if we had proper public procurement procedures for such investments. So in that sense, I think that, you know, the European Union needs to take a much more strategic approach to this region, and really this is the place where the European Union can and should prove its geostrategic strength and role. So let's see. I'm being optimistic still, and I think that the EU is learning on its past mistakes, although sometimes it is taking time and it is maybe being slower than we would want it to be. But I think that we can expect greater awareness on the part of the European Union.
Great, thank you so much, Milena. That was fascinating to hear this whole picture that you've painted of the debate in Serbia, and so our audience, particularly in India, has learned a lot from this. Speaking of the EU being strategic, final round of questions for all the speakers, taking a look at the time. I found it very interesting, the EU debate around the Indo-Pacific. So when the global strategy came out all those years ago, Asia was hardly mentioned, and now we're at a position where we have a debate about the Indo-Pacific in various member states, as well as the EU level. We would probably see council conclusions in this month. I would like to ask all of you, what do you think of this development, particularly placing India in this context? Is there a renewed interest in engagement with India within your own countries? And how do you see the EU's Indo-Pacific approach? Is it seen as, you know, a region far away, or do you think it is high time the EU engages with this dynamic region? And maybe we can start in the reverse order with Minister Lokar.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, there's no vacuum in international relations. So the time when there's somebody moves out, somebody else can step in. Or at the same time, when ambitious grows, the one that has a potential can influence in the international relations. And definitely India, foreign policy of India now has much bigger, let's say, ambitions that, let's say, decades ago, which I think is good. And in that sense, it represents a very young and vibrant economy. And as, let's say, cards on the global poker game are changing again the sides, and as well in the situation where US Secretary of State is talking about techno-democracy and techno-autocracy, definitely we have a new regrouping in the world order. And especially when multilateralism has its own, let's say, downsize, it's time to find the new strategic partners. And India, in that sense, here plays a very important role. More or less, we share the same value. It's the democratic system. It's a big market. It is an ambitious administration, and in that sense, two, let's say, strategic partners can get together. In that sense, I think it's time for the renewal or revival of a relation between European Union and India. And for example, if I'm talking from the Slovenia perspective, from this Pacific side, in India, it's one of the most important market for us, and it's closer for our port Koper than, for example, China. And it's in a way natural trade exchange via to Europe as well from India. In that sense, we are more than interested to enhance our cooperation, and as well as European Union seek for, let's say, new partners in defending democratical values. India is very interesting interlocutors, and in that sense, we see like this cooperation between European Union and India as one of the future very intense and creative forum to find the solution for the better future.
Thank you so much. Minister Orescu.
Yes, I fully agree with Anje. It's very important to see, India as a strategic partner of the European Union, and it is a strategic partner of the European Union. That's why it is no accident that we are preparing this Indo-Pacific strategy of the European Union, and Romania is ready to to contribute with its own added value to this construction, which is very important. We have areas where we have know-how, like cybersecurity. We are hosting, starting with this year, the Cyber Center of the European Union in Bucharest, and there are many other perspectives that we can work on. We have started for already some years to work on improving and expanding our relations with the countries in the region. With Japan this year, we are working for upgrading the level of our relations to the level of strategic partnership. We are working hard on that. South Korea is already a strategic partner of Romania for already some time, and we are working to develop and enhance the cooperation with South Korea. We are working also on improving our relationship with Australia. And with India, I may say that we have a special relation grounded on an extended partnership, which we have concluded in 2013, covering a wide range of sectoral cooperation from defense to space and energy, IT&C, and tourism. And of course, we want to do more together. But remember that what I have mentioned in my previous intervention. What is important is to work for improving our strategic resilience. And for that, we need to work together with like-minded partners. And indeed, as Anja said, India is a like-minded partner of the European Union. We share the same values, we share the same democratic system, and we share the same attachment to multilateralism. And these are very good bases for working together. That's why I'm looking forward to the benefits of of improving our partnership with India, and at the same time, the benefits of this strategy for the Indo-Pacific.
Thank you very much. And Minister Silva.
Thank you. Since I agree with my colleagues, I will be very brief, making just 3 points. The first one is our strategy is a comprehensive one. This is not a question of replacing, for instance, Latin America with India. It's a question of diversifying our partnerships, of multiplying our interlocutors. Secondly, we need India to perform some of our main goals in global agendas. Let's see the climate action. We cannot achieve our goals, the goals that we defined for 2050, without the engagement of larger economies like India. Third, there are benefits that we can share. If we look at connectivity, if we look at digital technology, if you look of the human resources and the qualifications in technology, if we look to trade and investment, we see clearly what could be the mutual benefits of a Euro-Indian relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Milena, coming to you, how do you see the role of other external actors in the region? Japan, I know, has an ambassador at large for the Western Balkans, has been increasing its presence in the region. Would be curious to see if you think Indo-Pacific partners are interesting for Serbia as well, or if it's distracting attention from this region. What's your take on that?
Well, I believe that definitely since the relationship between the region and particularly Serbia and India have traditionally been very cordial, and the old Yugoslavia and India were partners in the non-aligned movement back in the previous century. I don't think that Serbia has, let's say, any reason not to fully comply with any EU policies relating to India, and I think that Serbia will be very much in compliance with those. In fact, India has gained more visibility in Serbia during the COVID crisis, especially with regards to the vaccination program, because it has donated 150,000 of the Covishield vaccines produced in India. It has provided them as a gift to Serbia. So this has been quite important for the visibility and showing this positive and cordial relationship between India. Where Serbia does have a problem, and where we still don't see any involvement and change and shift in this position, is non-alignment with the policies with the European Common Foreign and Security Policy with regards to China and Russia. So Serbia has basically not been complying with any of the European Union's resolutions concerning these two countries for a number of years now. For some reason, it did comply with a couple of resolutions concerning Belarus, which was a little bit of a shift. But overall, we see that this is where the real problem with Serbia's alignment with the EU's foreign policy lies. So I don't think that in any sense, India as a democratic country, which has already been mentioned, that this relationship can be in any way disturbing for Serbia's EU accession process. Where what we do see as disturbing in terms of even the formal alignment with the EU law are particularly cases of China and Russia.
Thank you very much. With this, I think we will close this panel. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was very interesting to see an optimistic assessment of the EU's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and the lessons to be learned to need to strengthen multilateralism. The focus on India and the Portuguese presidency, and I'm sensing strengthening relationship with the United States in the Slovenian one. And of course, the importance of India, the rediscovery in the sense of India as a partner, not only in trade and economics, but also in achieving global goods such as climate action, digital connectivity, and an important pillar in the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy. Those were all really important, really useful takeaways. Thank you so much to my four panelists for taking the time for joining us and providing some excellent food for thought for Raisina Dialogue 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.